A warm welcome to all my dear teachers to today's session. All of us have passed through this milestone, which is the children's stage, and we know that it is one of the important stages in development. So it is imperative also for each and every one of us to understand that there are certain fundamental rights for the child. So in today's session, we are going to discuss on the child's rights. A deep dive into why the child rights matter and how to secure them. I request each and every one of you to kindly keep ready your notebook as well as your pen, because these are important for you to take down the rights and the policies, the acts which will be shared through my presentation. So when we are talking about the child's right, first we need to understand who do we say is a child. So a child is any person under the age of 18. The United Nations Convention for the Children's Rights also have clearly mentioned that we need to understand that all children have all these rights, no matter who they are, where they live, what language they speak, what their religion is, what they think, what they look like, even if they are a boy or a girl. Even so, they have a disability. If they are from the rich or the poor family, no matter who their parents or their families are, or what their parents or the families believe or do not, no child should be treated unfairly for any reason. The child rights in India are safeguarded through various laws, policies, constitutional provisions that aims to protect the children from being exploited, to ensure that their welfare is secured, and also to promote their overall development. India is also one of the countries to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, that is the UNCRC, which emphasizes on 4 broad categories of the rights, which are survival, development, protection, and participation. So I have divided the sessions into 3 parts. The first part, it is the critical imperative, which is to understand why safeguarding the child rights is the bedrock of India's democratic future. 4 articles I have taken into consideration. The 2 are the fundamental rights, which is Article 21A, which guarantees free and compulsory education to all children aged 6 to 14 years as a fundamental right. So it is very important to understand, even under the RTE Act 2009, all children from the age of 6 to 14, they should have access to the right to education. Article 24, it strictly prohibits the employment of the children below the age of 14 in any factory, any mine, or any hazardous occupation. This Article 24, it's the prohibition of child labor, as we understand that children should not be involved in any physical labor, so, which prohibits them from any exposure towards any physical work. The next directive principles, that is Article 39E and F, it mandates that the tender age of the children should not be abused due to any economic necessity, and that they are given opportunities to develop in a healthy manner with freedom and dignity. Article 39E and F is the protection against the child being exploited. So which is why the government of India, it directs to all the states to protect the children from being abused and also from the economic exploitation. Article 39F, it ensures that the children are given opportunities and the facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity. Article 45, it directs the state to provide early childhood care and education for all the children until they complete the age of 6 years. We are seeing this in the state of Meghalaya also, that emphasis is being given to ECCE for both the care as well as the education. When we look at the socio-economic cause of inaction, we see that the cause of marginalizing the child's safety, that is 35% of the children are seen stunting rate in the entire country. What is the cause? The cause is the failure to implement the basic nutrition and education rights. It can lead to severe systemic losses. It is also observed that the chronic childhood undernutrition also reduces the lifelong intellectual capacity and labor productivity. So, whenever a child is being undernourished or maybe does not have the basic requirement of nutrition, it not only affects the intellectual of the child but also the physical aspect that the child needs to undergo. This cause also affects the cognitive deficits directly, which lowers the educational attainment. Certain times we see that why the child is underperformed. Reason is because right from the time that they were small, so that basic requirement of nutrition is not being given to the child, which at a later stage it becomes a deficit when it comes to the intellectual and the cognition of the child. Vulnerable children are also significantly more susceptible to trafficking. And economists project the child neglects reduces the national growth potential by billions. As we are all aware that India is a young nation, in particular Meghalaya has a maximum number of youth population. So, if the youth of today right from the childhood stage, they are not being protected and they are not being served the nutrition that is required, then it's going to affect the entire state and the nation as a whole. We will look into the key laws protecting the child rights in India. India has core legislative framework, the acts and also the year has been given, and the mandates which the act needs to be emphasized upon, and who are the enforcement mechanism. The first act, since it is related to education, so we will be emphasizing on the RTE Act, that is the Right to Education Act 2009. What does the RTE Act mandates? Specifically, the RTE, it guarantees free and compulsory primary education to all the children, each and every child of the age group of 6 to 14. So, no child should be left behind. And who will be taking care of this? It will be the local authorities and the school management committees. Even the SMC in today's education plays a very important role, because each school has been mandated to constitute the SMCs. The next act is the POCSO Act, the Protection of Children from Sexual Offence, that is 2012. This act, it protects all minors from being abused, from sexual harassment and from any structural exploitation. The mechanism who will take care, it will be the designated special court and also the child-friendly police. The next act is the Juvenile Justice Act 2015. This act, it mandates that all children in conflict with law and those needing care and protection needs to be governed by all the states. It will be the Juvenile Justice Board, that is the JJBs, and the CWCs who needs to take care of the children who are being in conflict or maybe for those who need the care and protection. The next act is on the Child Marriage Act 2006. This act, it prohibits the child solemnization, declaring marriages under legal age voidable. For a child to get married or maybe for a person to get married, there is a legal age. We will dwell into that a little bit later. The child marriage prohibition officers will take care of the children who are marrying underage. The next act is the Child Labour Amendment 2016. This act, it completely banned on the employment of children under the age of 14. So which means that this act, it regulates the adolescent stage. The people enacting on this will be the inspectors and the district magistrates. And the last act that we are going to see is the Food Security Act, that is 2013. What does Food Security Act mandates? It mandates that guarantees nutritional support, free meals for pregnant women and children. Who's going to look into this act? It will be the Anganwadi centers and also the state food commissions. So we will take a look briefly on what these acts are telling us. The first, that is the Right to Education Act 2009. What does this act emphasizes on? It mandates schooling, which is free education to be provided in all the neighborhood schools for the age group of 6 to 14 years of age, which is why the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan came into being. The reason is because all states need to adhere into the neighborhood schools. For every 1 kilometer, the LP schools needs to be set up. For every 3 kilometer, the UP schools need to be set up. So which is, it mandates the schooling of children for in between the age group of 6 to 14 years. The second is social inclusion. There is a reservation of 25% in all private schools for children coming from the economically weaker sections. This ensures that even if a child wants to study in a private school, the private school cannot prohibit the child admission, or maybe it needs to guarantee admission of the child into the respective school, because the RTE Act in itself has specifically reserved 25% of the seats within their schools. The third is the no detention, a continuous comprehensive evaluation in order to prevent dropouts. So with the coming of the NEP, that is the National Education Policy, the CCE now has become into a competency-based assessment, where regular assessments will be undertaken for the child to ensure that continuous learning takes place for that time period, for the entire academic session. The pupil-teacher ratio also needs to be adhered to, where strict norms for quality instruction and school infrastructure needs to be maintained by all schools to ensure that learning takes place in a child-friendly and also in a safe environment. The next act, that is the POCSO Act, which is the protection from the offences. Safety and zero tolerance needs to be enacted in order to address sexual exploitation and the abuse of minors under the age of 18. When we are saying the sexual exploitation and the abuse of minors, here it includes both the boys as well as the girls, from being exploited sexually and also from being abused by any elderly or maybe by any person per se. This POCSO Act, it mandates that reporting needs to be undertaken by all the citizens, irrespective of the background that they are coming from. There are special courts only for POCSO in order that there will be speedy trials for all the cases that has been conducted. It also focuses on the child-friendly judicial procedures. There is a quote by Marian Wright Edelman which says that if we don't stand up for children, then we don't stand for much, because we know that the children should be the topmost priority. So the safety of the children is taken as the highest priority. So we need to stand up for the children. Otherwise, we do not stand up for much. The next act is on the JJ Act, that is the Juvenile Justice Act 2015. It says that the children who are in need of care, focuses will be on the rehabilitation for all the abandoned, the abused, or the missing children through the child welfare committees. So the children who are in need of care, the Juvenile Justice Act, it takes care of these type of children through these child welfare committees. Conflict with law. It also establishes the Juvenile Justice Board for reformatory justice rather than punitive incarceration. In case a child commits any crime, so instead of giving direct punishment to the child, this JJ Act, it ensures that the child needs to undergo into the correction center, where punishment will not be done immediately, but corrections will be done for that mistake or for the crime or that they have committed. What is the goal of this JJ Act? It is to provide proper care, development, and social reintegration. Taking the three laws together, that is the PCMA 2006, the Protection from the Child Marriage Act. The child marriage, it defines that two persons can get married only if they attain the legal age, that is, for female they have to be 18 and above, and for the male they have to be 21 and above years. If in case these children or maybe the individuals, they get married before these ages that has been prescribed, that is, they are considered as underage, so the PCMA Act comes into place. It makes child marriages voidable, and it also mandates harsh penalties for any adult offenders and abettors who are forcing children into getting into child marriage. The next act is the Labour Amendment 2016. This absolutely prohibits and ban on children under the age of 14. So any adolescents between the age of 14 to 18 are prohibited from any hazardous work, since this links directly to labour laws, also with the right to education, because children within the age of 14 are expected to be in school, are not expected to be out doing some labour. The last law that we are looking at is the National Food Security Act 2013. This is basically related to nutrition. It is a legal right of any child to food. It entitles all the children from 6 months to 14 years to free nutritious meals, which they can get through their Anganwadis and also through the midday meal schemes, which we are saying it as PM Poshan. The national policies promoting child rights, there are 3 policies. One is the National Policy for the Children, that is 2013, which identifies all children as a national asset. So I will just repeat or reiterate that children are considered as a priority in any state or nation. So this policy, that is the National Policy for Children, it identifies the children as the topmost assets in the country. It highlights the right to survival, to development, to protection, and also to participation, which ensures that the child have their own rights to survive, to live the way they want to develop, to grow the way they want to be protected, not being exploited by anyone within or outside the family, and also to participate in any platform, be it inside or outside the school premises, so they have the right to participate. The next policy is the ICDS, which is the Integrated Child Development Services. This is a nationwide program and initiative by the Government of India to provide health, nutrition and education services to all children below the age of 6 years and their mothers, which is the early childhood care that all children, it is mandated that they need the basic health, nutrition and education through the ICDS centers. The National Plan of Action for Children 2016, it provides a comprehensive roadmap to implement the National Policy for Children 2013. This policy focuses on the four key areas for the rights of the children, that is the survival, the development, the protection and the participation. The key rights in India as being emphasized by the National Plan of Action for Children, that is 2016, the four rights: the right to survival, the right to protection, the right to development and the right to participation. So as was already mentioned, when we say the right to survival, it includes the right to life, the way the child wants to live their own life, the right to getting good health facility, the right to getting proper food and nutrition, and also getting adequate standards of living. The right to protection, it protects the child from being exploited, from being abused, from the neglect and the violence within the family or outside the family. So the child have their very right to protection, which prohibits them from these that has been mentioned. The right to development, it emphasizes the right to education, to access to quality health care and the opportunities for any cultural and social development. And lastly, the right to participation. It encourages the children to express their own views in matters which affects them. So the child can express their own opinion, their own point of view, anything which affects their participation or maybe their right to survival, to protection or to development. This ensures that freedom is being promoted. When we say freedom, it is freedom of the expression, freedom of thought and freedom of association. Participation in school activities and community decision making is one of the key aspects of this right. The Government of India has initiated various missions and also initiatives at the national as well as at the state level. One of the mission that the national or the central government has initiated is the mission Vatsalya, which is standardizing the child protection services and all the institutional care across districts within each state. The next government initiative is the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. In the context of Meghalaya, perhaps we do not have much of this as a problem. Reason is because when we look at the girl child, they are doing far more better than the boy child. So, but this Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao is for the entire country. It targets the decline in the child sex ratio and also to promote the girl child education, especially in mainland India, where we are seeing that girl child are being prohibited into getting access for education or maybe the basic requirements of life. So NFSA 2013, which has already been mentioned, the National Food Security Act, it enhances the nutrition through the school-based midday meals or the PM Poshan. The main intent of this act is to improve the attendance of children going to school. Many a times it is also observed even in the schools in Meghalaya, in the context of Meghalaya, that children, they come to school only on the days where they are getting midday meals. So this act in itself, it proves to be successful in the sense that it is improving the attendance of the children through the PM Poshan that is being given in all the schools of the state. Let us look at the key indicators of the lingering disparities. When we look at the primary school enrollment, we see that the graph shows that there is maximum enrollment that at the primary stage. But as they go to the next stage, that is the transitional stage of the secondary education, we see there is a drop in the percentage of the school-going children. Furthermore, if we look at to the access towards safe sanitation, we see the percentage is not as per the enrollment of the children at the primary as well as the secondary stage. Under 5 age group, when we look at the optimal nutrition that the children are supposed to receive, it's again very limited. So though the entry enrollment is exceptionally high at the beginning, that is at the primary stage from classes 1 to 8, but we see there are critical gaps which still remain in the secondary stage. The retention is not there. From 96%, it has dropped to 79%. And with the optimal nutritional care, it further goes down. Part 2 of the discussion for today are on the challenges. What are the prevalent issues in order to implement the child rights? The basic challenges for the implementation of child rights, number 1 is on child labor. We know that there are rights, there are laws and policies prohibiting the child marriage or maybe the child labor or maybe the violence. But we still see that despite these legal prohibitions, the child are still being involved into labor. And this continues into many sectors. There are various factors, various reasons, and maybe various issues and challenges that the family as a whole they are facing, which is why when we look at the trend of the enrollment also, we see there is a good enrollment rate at the beginning, but it tends to drop down as the child grows with the stages of the school education. Main factors can be lack of awareness, poverty, weak enforcement of the law, which is why we are still seeing the children are being exploited into child labor. Second challenge, child marriage. Although there is a legal framework which exists and there is a legal age for the child to get married, for the person to get married, but still child marriage remains prevalent in many parts of the country and also in Meghalaya. Because if we look at Meghalaya is having a high percentage of teenage pregnancy. Even if they do not get married officially, but the children of underage are also getting pregnant. This again, it shows that the children or maybe the parents are not aware that there is a legal act which prohibits them from getting married underage. Violence and abuse. We are seeing so many cases of child abuse and also sexual exploitation in schools, outside the schools, to the extent at home. And these cases are being reported frequently, but there are certain hotspots where we see that cases are not being reported, indicating that there are still gaps in the protection measures and also in the enforcement of the laws like the POCSO Act. Just a brief statistics of the POCSO in Meghalaya for the year 2013. We see out of the 12 districts that is being depicted, the maximum number of cases that is being reported is in East Khasi Hills. I'll not go into the district wise, you can check it by yourself, but we will go to the least. The least district where cases are being reported is Southwest Khasi Hills, which is very under the reported. So we are seeing that although people are aware, but they do not come up front. People are aware of the POCSO Act is very much in place, but the reason that they are not coming forward is still a taboo. Maybe they are the trauma that the child is facing, and maybe the family, they do not want to be stigmatized. So there are various factors where POCSO reporting is not happening also across the districts in Meghalaya. The two next challenges towards child rights is malnutrition and poor health, and also to the access to quality education. Malnutrition, it continues to be a significant issue affecting the child's overall growth and development, which is why the government of India of Meghalaya also has taken the initiative of providing the folic acid tablet to all the children. Reason is because of the poor health that the children are facing right from the time that they are small, because this again, as it was mentioned earlier, it will not only affect the physical aspect of the child, but most importantly also the intellectual ability. The next challenge is the access to quality education. Although we know that the RTE Act mandates free and compulsory education to all children from the age group of 6 to 14, but still we are seeing that issues related to infrastructure, to teacher quality, to the dropout rates still continue to affect the educational outcomes. And when we are talking about the dropout rates, Meghalaya again is one of the state which is having the high number of dropout rates. And as we have also seen in the graph, where we see the enrollment at the primary is on the high, but with the transition to the secondary it becomes low, and it is lower when they reach the higher secondary stage, college and university. So this shows that although the RTE Act is there in place, but then access to quality education is still a challenge for the state. The last part, that is part 3, how to make this right. For this to make it happen, we need a roadmap to reform, which is a multi-sector action plan to bridge the gap between legislation, the law and the realities, that is the grassroots for implementation. The strategic pillar 1 is the structural reforms. The first one is law enforcement. We need to ensure that strict prosecuting employers who violate Child Labour Act while dismantling trafficking corridors through cross-state agency operations needs to be stopped by the law. So the law needs to be strong, the law needs to be in place, not only in paper but in practice. If we want to ensure that Child Labour Act is being adhered, the child are not being exploited or forced into child labor, then the law needs to take its stand. The law needs to put in place all the requirements, and also it needs to take action in case any agency or maybe any organization or any person or individuals, they violate the Child Labour Act. The second reform is a localized budget, which mandates child responsive budgeting. For this to happen, we need all stakeholders to come together, especially at the community level. We need our local communities to be strong, to guarantee earmark funds for the basic local health care and also for upgradation of the schools. We will not wait only for the government to come into the picture, but as a community, as the society at large, we need to come together, and maybe we need to have the localized budget to ensure that the basic necessity that the child needs to be provided needs to be done at the community level. The third is on digital monitoring. As we are in the digital age and space, we need to use this as a platform in order to have a digital database to track the real-time school dropout. This will ensure, it will allow immediate intervention from the welfare workers, because if we do not have a live database, it becomes very difficult to intervene, it becomes very difficult to detect, and it becomes too late when the child has already dropped out to track. Strategic pillar number 2, our grassroots empowerment. what do we need to do at the grassroots level? The first thing that we need to understand is on the empowering of the Child Protection Committee, that is the village local committee or maybe the village education committee. This can be done by training all the village level leaders to actively participate and intervene in case there are marriages or maybe underage pregnancy which is happening at the local community, involving any minors, and also to prevent the child from dropping out of education. Second is to upgrade the Anganwadi system, to transform the state-run daycare nursery into high-quality early learning hubs, equipping them with trained pedagogical staff. This is equally important. Reason is because if we want to ensure that quality education takes place at the grassroots level, taking into consideration the children below the age group of 6, that is the age of 3 to 5 years to 6 years, it becomes imperative, it becomes important to ensure that the education in the Anganwadi center needs to be upgraded. Sensitizing communities on gender equity, to eradicate all cultural standards that discourage the children from getting enrolled in the education, using targeted visual campaigns. So the community needs to come together to ensure that these cultural standards needs to be eradicated. Community needs to be sensitized, needs to be aware. And lastly, youth participation forum, which encourages the child to participate maybe in mock parliaments or maybe in legislature. This will ensure that the child are equally participating in the legislature as well as when it comes to decision making, to give the youth citizens a safe space so that they can grieve, so that they can come directly with the leaders at the community level. So it is important to ensure that the youth participate right from the grassroots level. This will groom them into public participation. Education as the ultimate catalyst. In order to have education at all levels, we need to ensure that quality school will protect the kids. Safe, dynamic classrooms are the single best protection against early childhood labor and also forced marriages. If a child comes to school and they feel that this environment, the classroom are safe and secure, this will prohibit them. This will also ensure that they will not get themselves into labor or maybe into early or teenage pregnancy. By providing accessible secondary schools with proper sanitation and free school lunches, that is PM Poshan, retention, as was mentioned earlier, it will definitely increase. So it is important to invest in the classroom because this will ensure the children are in a nurturing environment during their formative years. So education can play a vital role in grooming the child, also at the same time to ensure that they feel safe and secure, to ensure that education takes place, and it will also make them happy and also they will be satisfied in the classroom, in the education and the school system as a whole. So a quote by Nelson Mandela which says, "There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." So we can look at the society through the lens of a child. So a society can be revealed only how we treat the children. As a teacher, as a person, as an individual, we need to ensure that the child is safe under our guidance, under our supervision, and under our monitoring. So if the child feels safe and secure, And also, if we treat the child the way the child is expected to be treated, then we are forming a very good practice for a better society where the children will be developing in a very safe and a very secure environment. So let us come together, let us secure the tomorrow. We will not have the tomorrow if we do not secure the today. So let us join hands to protect, to educate, and to empower every child. So in case the child is facing any problem, or maybe is facing any abuse, exploitation, harassment, which can be of any form, physical, verbal, sexual, please ensure that the child call the helpline number, which is 1098. So in the presentation, as I've also given the images, sources and the references. So as we come to the close of the session, so it is very important to look back with the different acts, policies, laws, the legislation that the government of India has provided to the entire country, and as a state, as teachers community, let us join hands to ensure that the child get their basic rights as was enshrined by the Constitution through the various articles. As we have seen that there are various policies and acts that makes sure that the child feels safe, secure, and in case there is exploitation, in case they are being abused, in case there is any harassment of a kind that the child faces, the law is there to protect. So as teachers, you need to come forward, you need to ensure that the child feels safe and secure. There is a child helpline number which has been shared. You can request the children or maybe the parents of the child to come forward and not to hinder from any kind of violence that the child is facing. So thank you, dear teachers, for patiently listening. I hope you are enlightened with the basic information on the child's right. You kindly go through, and in case you have any confusion, you can communicate. So all the best. Thank you to all my dear teachers.